The eviction notice in my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Or maybe that was just me. March 15th, 2018, 4:47 p.m. Tomorrow at noon, marshals would chain the doors of Rosemary's Corner forever. 50 years old, and I was about to lose the only thing my grandmother left me that mattered. I was wrapping her last recipe card in newspaper when I heard the Mercedes pull up outside. You don't see many $80,000 cars on Maple Street. You definitely don't see people in Armani suits walking into a failing cafe that's serving its last cup of coffee. The woman's heels clicked against my worn linoleum like a countdown timer. The man behind her carried a leather briefcase that probably cost more than I made in a month. The woman looked at her Rolex, then directly at me with eyes that seemed to know every secret I'd ever kept. She said something that made my knees buckle. She said they represented someone I'd saved 21 years ago. Then she added, "Mrs. Noyes, the FBI is positioned to arrest your sister Patricia for murder and Harrison Blackwood for racketeering. We needed to secure you first. The arrests will happen as soon as I give the signal." Then she asked if I remembered a hungry little boy named Tommy. My name is Deborah Noyes, and I need to tell you how a single act of kindness destroyed my entire family and saved my life. Let me take you back to where this insanity began. October 1997. I was 29, fresh out of culinary school with dreams bigger than my bank account. My grandmother Rose had been getting weaker all summer, and Patricia, my older sister, had moved in to help. I was staying at the dorms to finish my final semester, driving home every weekend to check on Grandma. She kept complaining about new pills Patricia was giving her, said they made her feel worse instead of better. I wanted to question it, but Patricia had that way of making you feel stupid for asking. You know the type. They answer your questions with that slight smile that says you're too simple to understand complex medical things. Grandma died on October 15th. Heart failure, the doctor said. Natural causes for an 82-year-old woman. Patricia was there holding her hand. I was taking my final exam 3 hours away. By the time I got home, Patricia had already called the funeral home, the lawyer, and somehow convinced our grieving relatives that Grandma had changed her will the week before. Patricia got the house, $400,000 of prime real estate. I got the cafe, just the business, mind you, not the building. A bunch of old equipment, recipes, and a lease that seemed worthless. The lawyer read the will like he was announcing lottery winners. Patricia tried to look sad, but I caught her checking her reflection in the window, already calculating renovations. The only strange moment was when Harrison Blackwood showed up at the funeral. He was this 40-year-old property developer who'd been circling our neighborhood like a vulture for years. He made a beeline for me after the service, offered $15,000 cash for my lease rights, said he was doing me a favor, taking this burden off my hands. Something about the way he mentioned geological surveys made my skin crawl. I told him the cafe wasn't for sale. He smiled like I just told him a joke, only he understood. December 20th, 1997. The night everything changed. Buffalo was having the worst winter in a decade, and I was closing up alone, counting the days' pathetic take, $47. My heat had been cut to half to save money, and I was wearing 3 sweaters that all belonged to Grandma. That's when I heard something by the dumpster out back. At first, I thought it was a raccoon, but raccoons don't cry. The boy couldn't have been more than 8. He was wearing a summer jacket in December, shoes held together with duct tape, and jeans so thin I could see his knees through them. He was wedged between the dumpster and the wall, trying to stay out of the wind. When he saw me, he tried to run, but hunger makes you slow. He collapsed after 3 steps. I carried him inside. He weighed nothing, like carrying a bag of bird bones. His name was Tommy, he said, and he'd run away from his foster home 3 days ago. The foster dad liked to use his fists when he drank, which was every night ending in I. Tommy had been sleeping behind different restaurants, eating what he could find. He picked mine tonight because it smelled like bread. I made him Grandma's revival soup, the one she claimed saved my grandfather's life during the Depression. It had everything I could find: potatoes, carrots, the last of my good beef stock, and that secret ingredient Grandma never wrote down, but showed me once. Love, she said. The secret ingredient was giving a damn. Tommy ate 3 bowls. He said it was magic because his stomach stopped eating itself. Kid had a way with words that didn't match his age. That's when I noticed he was doing something strange. He was calculating the prices on my menu, adding up combinations in his head faster than my register could. When I tested him with a complicated order, 3 sandwiches, different prices with tax, he had the answer before I could reach for my calculator. The boy was some kind of mathematical genius wearing ripped jeans and mismatched socks. I let him sleep in the storage room that night. Told myself it was just one night. But when morning came and he helped me prep vegetables with the precision of a surgeon, calculating portions down to the penny, I knew I was in trouble. This kid was special, and the world had been kicking him around like garbage. My sign in the window might as well have said, "Credit cards accepted, miracles performed," not simultaneously. But maybe, just maybe, I could manage both for Tommy. The gourmet menu that week featured soup of the day, which is also soup of the month. But Tommy declared it structurally sound after his sandwich fell apart, joking it had structural integrity issues. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, please subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time is it there. I read every single one. Your support keeps these stories coming. Tommy became my shadow that winter. Turned out the kid didn't just have a gift for numbers. He had a photographic memory that would make MIT professors weep. He memorized every customer's order after serving them once. Mrs. Henderson always wanted her coffee with 2 sugars and a splash of cream. Tommy knew. Bob from the hardware store liked his sandwich with extra mustard. But hold the pickles? Tommy had it ready before Bob finished parking. I set up a little study corner in the storage room with books from the library. Tommy devoured them like he devoured that first soup. He created what he called an efficiency chart for sandwich making that saved 12 seconds per order. 12 seconds might not sound like much, but when you're serving 50 sandwiches at lunch, that's 10 minutes saved. 10 minutes to actually eat something myself instead of surviving on coffee and panic. My sister Patricia started visiting more often, always at the worst possible times. 5 in the morning, she'd show up with that fake, concerned face. "Deborah, dear, you look so tired. Maybe you should sell to Harrison before you work yourself to death." Harrison Blackwood. That name kept popping up like a bad rash. Turned out Patricia had started dating him just 2 months after Grandma's funeral. What a coincidence. The health inspector who showed up in January was Patricia's friend from high school. She found violations that didn't exist, wrote them up anyway. Dirty corners that were spotless. Temperature violations on refrigerators that worked perfectly. Tommy watched it all with those serious eyes, then said something that chilled me. "Ms. Deborah, bad people always think nobody's watching, but someone's always watching." That's when I started my evidence journal. Every suspicious visit, every fake violation, every threatening letter, I documented everything. Took photos with the disposable camera I kept under the register. Tommy helped, his perfect memory catching details I missed, like how the health inspector's report was dated wrong, or how Harrison's offer letters always came exactly 1 day after each violation. The miracle came in February. Ms. Jane, a retired teacher who ate lunch at the cafe every Tuesday, noticed Tommy reading college-level textbooks while wiping tables. She asked him a few questions, then sat there stunned. She made some calls. Within a week, Tommy was taking official IQ tests. 187. The social worker who came to investigate his living situation said he needed proper schooling, a stable home. Ms. Jane volunteered to be his foster mother. I should have been happy. This was best for Tommy. Ms. Jane had a real house with heat that worked and food that didn't depend on the day's sales. She lived in Boston, near good schools that could actually challenge his mind. But watching Tommy pack his 3 belongings into a grocery bag broke something in me. That's when Tommy did the most Tommy thing ever. He pulled out a napkin and started calculating. "Ms. Deborah, you've spent $2,847 on me. Food, the coat, shoes, books. With compound interest at current market rate of 7%, I'll owe you $50,000 by age 30. He signed it. Future rich person Tommy. I laughed. He didn't. "I keep my promises," he said with the seriousness of someone 5 times his age. The day they left, I found something while cleaning out Grandma's office. her diary from the last year hidden behind old tax returns. The entries from summer were normal: recipes, gossip, complaints about her soap operas. But September was different. Patricia brings new pills, white instead of pink. Feel worse each day. Tried to tell Deborah, but Patricia says I'm confused. Not confused, scared. My hands shook reading it. The white pills, the pink pills. Grandma's heart medication was pink. What were the white ones? I had no proof, no way to investigate without sounding like a crazy person accusing my sister of murder. So I kept the diary, added it to my evidence journal, and waited. Patricia married Harrison in 2000. The wedding invitation somehow got lost in the mail, though Patricia hand-delivered eviction attempt number 1 as a wedding gift. Her new husband had bought the building from Mr. Peterson, or so Harrison claimed. The eviction failed because my grandmother, God bless her paranoid soul, had secured a 50-year lease back in 1975. Fixed rent, ironclad terms. Couldn't be broken until 2025. The look on Harrison's face when his lawyer explained this was better than Christmas. He turned the color of overcooked beets. Patricia's Botox prevented her from frowning properly, so she just stood there looking permanently surprised by her own evil plan failing. Meanwhile, Ethel, my 82-year-old regular, took one look at Harrison and declared he looked like someone was permanently farting near him. She wasn't wrong. The year 2000 should have been a fresh start, but Harrison and Patricia had other plans. Every month brought new harassment, mystery grease trap failures that cost hundreds to fix, rodent sightings that no one else ever saw, permit delays for repairs that should have taken days but stretched into months. My regular customers started noticing. Ethel, now 85 and sharp as a fresh blade, organized what she called reconnaissance missions on Harrison. She'd sit at the country club with her hearing aid, accidentally turned up, gathering intelligence. The regulars formed their own little resistance. They'd warn me when inspectors were coming, take photos of Harrison's people snooping around, even started a petition when the city tried to revoke my food service license over imaginary violations. Meanwhile, Ms. Jane sent updates about Tommy from Boston. The boy was thriving. Entered high school at 10, was taking college courses by 12. MIT had already noticed him, offering early admission whenever he was ready. But what touched me most were the personal notes. Tommy talks about you every day, Ms. Jane wrote. He's calculated how many days until he can repay your kindness. I've never seen a child so determined to keep a promise. Patricia's visits became psychological warfare. She'd mention how tired I looked, how the cafe was dragging me down, how Harrison could make all my problems disappear with one check. She'd gotten another facelift that made her look permanently startled by basic math. I put up a sign, Harrison Free Zone, happiness guaranteed. Customers loved it. Patricia threatened to sue for defamation. My lawyer, yes, I had to get a lawyer, laughed and said truth was an absolute defense. The year 2005 brought disaster. Mr. Peterson, my original landlord, was forced to sell the building. Harrison had orchestrated some kind of financial crisis for the old man. Missed payments on loans that Peterson swore he'd paid, mysterious liens appearing on his properties. The building went to something called Metro Property Management. I didn't find out until years later that Metro Property was just Harrison hiding behind legal paperwork, but my lease held. Grandma, in her infinite wisdom, had included something called subsurface rights in the lease agreement. Anything under the property belonged to the leaseholder during the lease term. I didn't understand what that meant then. Harrison did, though. God, how he understood. The 2008 recession almost killed me. Not Harrison, the actual economy did his work for him. Sales dropped 60%. I was down to serving recession specials. Soup so thin, one customer joked it was homeopathic. The joke became my actual marketing. Homeopathic soup, the memory of vegetables. Gallows humor was all I had left. My customer loyalty program became Survive 10 Financial Crises, Get Free Coffee. Then, in 2010, a miracle. Money orders started arriving. $487 every month, no name, no return address. Just enough to cover the most urgent repairs. Just enough to keep the lights on. The note always said the same thing. from someone who remembers. I cried the first time, actually collapsed in my kitchen and sobbed into my flour-covered apron. Someone cared. Someone remembered. In a world where my own sister was trying to destroy me, a stranger was keeping me alive. The money came like clockwork. Never missed a month. When the water heater exploded, next month's money order was exactly enough for a new one. When the refrigerator died, the money covered a used replacement perfectly. It was like someone was watching, calculating exactly what I needed to survive. Patricia ramped up her attacks between 2010 and 2015, spread rumors I was mentally declining, had her country club friends request welfare checks, hoping authorities would find something to declare me incompetent. 37 fake health violations over 5 years, 12 permit delays that turned 2-day repairs into month-long nightmares. She even triggered an IRS audit through Harrison's connection at the tax office, but I documented everything. My evidence journal had become evidence journals, plural. Tommy's gift of obsessive detail had rubbed off on me. Every conversation recorded. Legally, New York is a one-party consent state. Every document photographed. Every witness name logged. I started joking with customers that I needed a violation bingo card. Inspector finds invisible mice. Check. Patricia visits before dawn. Check. Harrison offers insulting buyout. Check. Mystery agency appears with fake complaint. Check. Threatening letter with spelling errors. Bingo. Tommy had given me one parting gift idea before leaving, his business plan written in crayon, which made me laugh even as my heart broke. By 2015, I thought I'd survived the worst. I was 47, had been fighting this war for 18 years and somehow still standing. The cafe barely broke even, but it was mine. The anonymous money orders kept coming, keeping me one step ahead of disaster. My customers had become family, checking on me daily, bringing their friends to boost sales. We'd created our own little ecosystem of survival. If you're still with me, thank you for listening to this journey. Stories like these remind us that justice does exist, even when it takes decades to arrive. What I didn't know was that Tommy, now 26, had built an empire. He'd created something called Memory Vault at 19, an app that helped people with memory problems, sold it for $2 million, used that money to found Ethical Tech, an AI company that specialized in pattern recognition for financial crimes. By 2015, his company was worth $10 million, and he'd hired a retired FBI agent named Frank Morrison as a private investigator. Frank had been digging into Harrison for months. What he found was staggering. Harrison wasn't just harassing me, he was running a multi-state property fraud ring. 23 elderly victims across 3 states. Same pattern everywhere. Harassment, fake violations, forced sales at insulting prices, then development projects that made millions. The man was a professional predator in a suit that cost more than most people's cars. But the big discovery came from university archives. Frank found a 1960 geological survey conducted by Harrison's father. The entire block, my cafe, the shops around it, the parking lot behind, sat on a rare lithium deposit, worth $30 million at current market prices. Harrison's father had hidden the report, planning to buy the land cheap someday. Harrison inherited the scheme along with his father's business. My 50-year lease included subsurface rights. As long as I held that lease, I controlled mineral rights worth $30 million, and I had no idea. Every eviction attempt, every fake violation, every moment of harassment over 18 years had been about those rocks under my floor. I was serving coffee above a fortune while counting pennies for heat. Harrison found his loophole in 2017. Buried in page 47 of the lease was a clause. Rent could be increased after substantial improvements to the building structure. So Harrison added one brick, literally one brick, to the back wall, painted it a slightly different shade of beige, and called it a substantial improvement. My February 2018 rent went from $3,000 to $15,000 a month. I appealed, lost, appealed again, lost again. Harrison had judges in his pocket, like spare change. The eviction notice came February 15th, 2018. 30 days to pay $90,000 in back rent for the months I'd paid the incorrect amount, or get out. The cafe that had survived the Depression, 3 recessions, and 2 world wars would die because of one painted brick. My sign read, "Still open, despite Harrison's best efforts," while Patricia's Botox made her look perpetually surprised by her own evil, as one customer noted. I started packing in early March, not dramatically, just slowly accepting defeat, gave extra food to the homeless, started telling regular customers to try the coffee shop 2 blocks over, wrote recommendation letters for my 2 part-time employees, even started looking at my cousin's basement in Nebraska as my retirement plan. The stress baking got out of control. When I'm anxious, I bake. When I'm terrified, I bake more. By March 10th, I'd made 400 muffins. Gave them all to the food bank because I couldn't stand seeing them go stale like my dreams. The recipients sent thank you cards that made me cry harder than the eviction notice. My final sign read, "Closing soon, Harrison's fault, direct complaints to him." Patricia visited one last time on March 14th. She was practically glowing, like a vampire who'd finally found the perfect neck. She sat at the counter, ordered a coffee she didn't drink, and told me everything. How they'd spent 20 years destroying me. How Grandma's death wasn't natural. She'd switched the heart medication with blood pressure pills that, when combined, caused heart failure. How Harrison's father had found the lithium in 1960. How they needed my lease gone to access it. How stupid I'd been, sitting on millions while wearing secondhand shoes. She said all this casually, like discussing the weather. Even mentioned that Harrison had cameras in my apartment, had been watching me for years, laughing at my pathetic attempts to survive. The violation reports were pre-written. The judges were prepaid. The conclusion was predetermined. "You should have taken the $15,000, she said, leaving a $100 bill on the counter like a final insult. At least then you'd have something. That night I sat in my empty cafe with my packed boxes and Grandma's recipes. I'd failed her. Failed the legacy. Failed Tommy, who'd believed I was someone worth saving. The anonymous benefactor who'd kept me afloat would find out tomorrow that their money had been wasted on someone too weak to win. I'd been serving today's special food Harrison can't ruin, but he'd ruined everything anyway. March 15th, 2018 arrived like a funeral. I was alone, packing the last photo of Grandma and me at the cafe's grand opening in 1952. Her smile seemed to say something I couldn't quite hear. Maybe goodbye. Maybe I'm sorry. Maybe hold on just 5 more minutes. That's when the Mercedes pulled up. The woman in the Armani suit looked at her Rolex again. Through the window, I could see black SUVs pulling up, surrounding the block like they were planning a presidential visit. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The man with her hadn't spoken yet, just stood there, studying me with eyes that seemed familiar but impossible to place. "Mrs. Noyes," the woman continued. "My name is Sarah Winters. I'm an attorney specializing in RICO cases. That's organized crime in layman's terms. The man beside me has spent 18 months documenting the most elaborate property fraud scheme the FBI has seen in a decade. Before we proceed, he wanted to ask you something." The man stepped forward, and when he smiled, 21 years melted away. Same crooked grin that used to appear when he'd calculated a perfect solution. Same eyes that saw patterns in chaos. "Miss Deborah," he said, voice deep but gentle, "do you still have that napkin where I promised to pay you back?" My knees gave out. I grabbed the counter for support. "Tommy, Dr. Thomas Richardson now," he said, catching my arm to steady me. MIT graduate, founder of Ethical Tech, recent seller of said company to Google for $50 million, and lifelong keeper of promises. Also the person who's been sending you $487 every month since 2010. The room spun. I couldn't process it. The skinny 8-year-old who'd calculated sandwich prices faster than my register was standing here in a suit that probably cost more than my car, telling me he was worth $50 million. "Tommy, but you're tall, and you have hair, everywhere appropriate." He laughed. $487. I calculated your average monthly shortfall from the financial records I hacked. Yes, I hacked your bank. I was 13 and worried. But we need to move fast. Sarah Winters interrupted. "We have Patricia's full confession to murder, Harrison's admission to the entire fraud scheme. The arrests happen as soon as I give the signal." Tommy pulled out an iPad, swiped to a video. Patricia made a mistake. She got drunk at the Granite Falls Country Club last month, started bragging to someone she thought was a new member. The woman was an undercover federal agent. Watch. On the screen, Patricia's wine-flushed face was animated. Cruel. Her words were clear, despite the background chatter. Switching mom's pills was easy. Pink pills, white pills, who could tell the difference? Deborah was too stupid, checking on her every day but never checking the actual medication. Harrison said we needed the house as collateral for his bigger plans. Mom had to go. The only surprise was how quickly the white blood pressure pills worked with her heart medication. 3 weeks instead of 3 months. I had to act devastated at the funeral while calculating renovation costs in my head. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. 21 years of suspicion confirmed in a casual confession over Chardonnay. Grandma hadn't died naturally. She'd been murdered by her own daughter for a house and a lithium deposit. When I came back, Tommy was on the phone. "Yes, all teams. Green light. Both subjects. Simultaneous arrest. The murder confession is authenticated." He hung up and turned to me. "Harrison's being arrested on the 9th hole at his country club. Patricia is in the middle of hot yoga. We thought the locations were poetically appropriate." "How?" was all I could manage. Tommy sat me down, pulled up a chair. "After Ms. Jane took me in, I never forgot you. MIT accepted me at 14. I was coding by 15, selling apps by 19. That Memory Vault app I created, it was inspired by you, actually. You remembered every customer's preference, every small kindness, every detail that mattered. I wanted to give that ability to everyone." Sarah Winters added, "What Dr. Richardson discovered through his private investigator would have been enough for civil suits, but then we found the pattern. 23 elderly victims across 3 states, all forced to sell properties that mysteriously contained valuable resources or development potential. That triggered RICO statutes. This became a federal case. Harrison made mistakes," Tommy continued. "He got arrogant, started using the same shell companies repeatedly. Metro Property Management, Blackwood Holdings, Center City Leasing, all the same tax ID number if you dug deep enough. My AI company specialized in pattern recognition for financial crimes. Harrison's scheme lit up our algorithms like a Christmas tree. My phone started buzzing. Local news alerts. Prominent developer arrested at country club. Socialite taken into custody during yoga class. FBI raids multiple offices in fraud investigation." Tommy showed me another video. Harrison in golf attire trying to run from FBI agents in cleats. He slipped on the wet grass, fell face first into a sand trap. The country club members, who'd apparently always despised him, actually applauded his arrest. One elderly man shouted, "That's for foreclosing on my brother's house." Another yelled, "That's for stealing the Methodist Church's land." "The murder charge," I whispered. "Will it stick?" Sarah nodded. Patricia's confession, combined with pharmacy records showing she purchased both medications, plus the diary you kept of your grandmother's final days, it's enough. We also have Harrison on tape discussing how they needed your grandmother dead to proceed with their plan. Conspiracy to commit murder, first-degree murder, federal fraud charges. They're both going away for a very long time. Tommy pulled out a document. "But first, we need to handle your immediate problem. This is an emergency injunction. A federal judge signed it an hour ago. The eviction is canceled. The rent increase is void. The cafe stays open pending federal investigation. And Deborah," he smiled that same 8-year-old's grin, "you're about to become very wealthy." Harrison's renovation was one brick painted slightly different beige. Even the judge laughed. I started stress baking again, but this time it was celebration muffins. 400 of them, all for the FBI agents who were about to change everything. If you're still listening, thank you for joining me on this journey. Your support means everything, and I promise this story is about to get even better. The news hit Granite Falls like a meteor. Within an hour, everyone knew. Harrison Blackwood, the man who'd built an empire on foreclosures and forced sales, was in federal custody. Patricia Noyes Blackwood, socialite and charity board member, was in jail for murdering her own mother. The FBI had seized everything: homes, cars, bank accounts, even Patricia's jewelry collection. Tommy had thought of everything. While the arrests happened, his team of lawyers filed civil suits on behalf of every victim they'd identified. Elderly people who'd lost homes to mysterious liens, small business owners forced out by fake violations, families destroyed by Harrison's predatory schemes. The lawsuit totaled $97 million in damages. But the real shock came when Tommy explained the mineral rights. "Your grandmother was a genius," he said, showing me the original lease. "This subsurface rights clause, she must have known something. Maybe not lithium specifically, but she knew this land was special. As long as you hold this lease, you own everything under this building down to 30 feet. The lithium deposit is worth $30 million at current market prices." $30 million. I couldn't even conceive of that number. "But it gets better," Sarah Winters added, "because Harrison knew about the deposit and deliberately hid this information. While trying to force you out, you have grounds for additional damages. Fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress, conspiracy. We're looking at another $20 million minimum in punitive damages." My regular customers started arriving, drawn by the news. Ethel, now 90 but still sharp, brought champagne. "I knew that constipated weasel was up to something," she announced. Bob from the hardware store started a Deborah Day petition right there in the cafe. Within an hour, I had 200 people crammed into a space meant for 50, all celebrating. Harrison had tried to flee in his golf cleats and fallen into a water hazard. Patricia's Pilates class had apparently applauded when the FBI walked in. Tommy watched from the corner, smiling but staying out of the spotlight. I pulled him aside. "Why?" I asked. "You could have just lived your life. You didn't owe me anything." He pulled out his wallet, extracted a carefully preserved napkin. There, in a child's handwriting, was his promise to pay me back. "You gave me more than food," he said. "You gave me hope when the world had written me off. You showed me that kindness existed even when you had nothing. Every line of code I wrote, every company I built, every algorithm I designed, I was trying to become someone worthy of that kindness." Then he added something that made me cry. "Tommy, you have cheekbones and a jaw. When did that happen?" I laughed through tears. Ms. Jane appeared in the doorway. She was older now, walking with a cane, but her eyes were bright. "I hope you don't mind," Tommy said. "I flew her in from Boston. She wanted to be here for this." The two women who'd saved Tommy hugged while he tried not to cry. We all failed at not crying. The next revelation came from Tommy's investigator, Frank Morrison. "We've documented everything," he said, spreading files across 3 tables. "Harrison's scheme goes back to 1992. His father started it in the 1960s, but Harrison industrialized it. We have 47 forged documents, bank records showing $3.2 million in bribes, recorded conversations spanning 5 years. Your sister and Harrison thought they were untouchable. They kept records of everything, like trophies. The best part," Tommy added with a grin, "is that Harrison's own smart home system recorded him, every conspiracy meeting in his home office, every threatening phone call, every discussion about destroying you. His Alexa caught it all. He never realized the devices he had installed for convenience were documenting his crimes. We even have him trying to bribe FBI agents with Starbucks gift cards during his arrest." The federal prosecutor arrived that evening, Janet Walsh, a woman who looked like she ate corporate criminals for breakfast and asked for seconds. "Mrs. Noyes, I want to be clear. Your sister and Harrison are going to prison. The only question is for how long. With your testimony and the evidence Dr. Richardson compiled, we're looking at 25 to life for Patricia on the murder charge alone. Harrison's facing 30 years minimum on RICO charges." "What about the others?" I asked. "The judges, inspectors, officials they bribed?" 6 arrests so far, Walsh replied. "More coming. This is the largest corruption case in state history. The governor called personally to assure me unlimited resources for prosecution." That night, Tommy and I sat in the empty cafe, boxes still packed around us. "I bought something," he said quietly. "Actually, I bought a lot of somethings." He pulled out a folder of deeds. "The entire downtown block, $12 million. I want to create something called the Noise Community Campus. Your cafe will be the centerpiece, but we'll add a youth homeless shelter, a coding academy for underprivileged kids, a senior center, and a free meal program. All in your grandmother's name." I stared at the deeds. "Tommy, I can't accept—" "You already did," he interrupted. 21 years ago, you accepted a hungry kid when you had nothing to give. This isn't charity, Deborah. This is an investment in the same kind of kindness that saved me. We're going to save other kids, other Tommies who just need one person to believe in them." The trial was faster than anyone expected. When the judge saw the evidence Tommy's team had compiled, boxes and boxes of documented crimes, he fast-tracked everything. The media called it the Granite Falls Greed Trial, and court TV broadcast every minute. Harrison's lawyers abandoned him on day 3. When the prosecution played recordings of Harrison describing how he destroyed that pathetic waitress year by year, like a cat playing with a mouse, even his legal team couldn't stomach defending him. He tried to represent himself, which went about as well as his attempt to run in golf cleats. Patricia's trial was worse. The prosecution played her country club confession 5 times. They showed pharmacy records, bank statements, and Grandma's diary. The medical examiner testified that the combination of switched medications would have caused exactly the kind of heart failure Grandma suffered. When Patricia took the stand, she tried to cry, but her latest Botox treatment prevented any actual expression. The jury saw right through her. One juror later told me Patricia looked perpetually surprised by math during financial testimony. The sentences came down like hammer blows. Harrison, 30 years federal prison, no possibility of parole for 15. Patricia, life in prison. Possibility of parole after 25 years. Judge Ronald Myers, 10 years for accepting bribes. Health Inspector Carla Hendricks, 5 years for fraud. 4 other officials, 5 to 10 years each. The restitution was staggering. $97 million to be divided among victims. The government seized every asset Harrison and Patricia owned. The house Patricia inherited through murder, Harrison's 7 cars, their yacht, even Patricia's engagement ring, all auctioned for victim compensation. But the sweetest justice was more personal. Patricia got assigned to kitchen duty in federal prison. The woman who'd never cooked a meal in her life was now scrubbing pots for 200 inmates daily. Harrison's cellmate was a tax attorney, serving time for embezzlement, who talked constantly about regulatory frameworks and liked to sing Broadway shows off-key. When Harrison tried to run his schemes from prison, attempting to defraud 3 other inmates out of their commissary funds, they ensured he spent significant time in the medical ward. The mineral rights situation resolved beautifully. A clean energy company offered $30 million for the lithium deposit. I kept $3 million, enough to renovate the cafe and live comfortably. The rest went to establish the Second Chances Foundation, providing legal aid to elderly victims of property fraud. Tommy's Noise Community Campus became reality with stunning speed. Construction crews worked around the clock. The homeless shelter opened first, then the coding academy. The senior center was Ms. Jane's domain. She moved to Granite Falls permanently to run it. The free meal program served 500 people daily within the first month. Ms. Jane ran the senior center with incredible energy until she passed away peacefully in 2019, surrounded by dozens of foster children she'd helped over the years. The cafe reopened on July 4th, 2018. Independence Day felt appropriate. I kept the original menu but added one item, Tommy's sandwich, the exact meal I'd made him 21 years ago. Price: free for any child who's hungry. Adults paid $20, with proceeds funding the meal program. The town council officially declared July 4th as Deborah Day. I tried to stop them, but Ethel threatened to run for mayor if I refused. The celebration drew thousands of people. Every business Harrison had destroyed, every family he'd cheated, every elder he'd swindled, they all came. Not for revenge, but for hope. The town even proposed a statue, me holding a soup ladle like Lady Liberty. Tommy gave a speech that day. He stood where Harrison used to hold court at the country club and spoke about kindness. Deborah Noyes saved me with a bowl of soup and the radical belief that a throwaway kid might be worth something. She didn't know I'd become successful. She didn't know about the lithium. She didn't know anything except that I was hungry and she could help. That's true kindness, helping when there's nothing in it for you. The FBI used our case as a model for fighting elder fraud nationwide. Tommy's AI company, now part of Google, created free software that detected property fraud patterns. Within a year, they'd exposed 200 similar schemes across the country, recovering $500 million in stolen assets. Patricia tried to appeal, of course. She claimed temporary insanity, coercion by Harrison, even poisoning by the prison food. The appeals court judge, an elderly woman whose own mother had been one of Harrison's victims, denied everything in record time. Patricia's lawyer told me she screamed for an hour when she learned she'd have to serve at least 25 years. Her prison job, ironically, became part of the Hygiene Excellence Program, then scrubbing toilets. Harrison died in 2025. Heart attack in his cell after serving 7 years, alone and unmourned. His cellmate said he was trying to calculate a new fraud scheme when it happened, still convinced he'd find a loophole to freedom. December 20th, 2018, 21 years to the day since I found Tommy behind my dumpster. The cafe was packed with the dinner rush, families enjoying free meals, students from the coding academy grabbing coffee, seniors from Miss Jane Center playing chess by the window. The Noise Community Campus had transformed our entire downtown from a dying district into a thriving community hub. I was closing up, counting the till. We'd made more in one day than I used to make in a month when I heard something by the dumpster. My heart stopped. Not again. The universe couldn't be that predictable. But it was. A boy, maybe 10, huddled in the same spot where Tommy had been. Torn jacket, shoes held together with hope and duct tape. That hollow look that comes from hunger being your only reliable companion. His name was Marcus, and he'd been sleeping rough for a week after running from a foster home where the dad's fists spoke louder than words. I brought him inside. Tommy was there. He often helped close up, said it kept him grounded, and the look on his face when he saw Marcus was like looking in a mirror across time. Without a word, I started making revival soup, Grandma's recipe, same as always. The secret ingredient was still the same, giving a damn. Marcus ate 3 bowls. "Why are you helping me?" he asked between spoonfuls. "Someone asked me that exact question 21 years ago," I said, catching Tommy's smile. "The answer hasn't changed, because I can." Tommy sat beside Marcus, businessman worth millions sitting next to a homeless child, equal in this moment. "You know what I learned?" Tommy said. "Kindness isn't about the size of the gesture. It's about the size of the heart making it. Miss Deborah had nothing when she helped me, but she gave everything." We found Marcus a safe foster home with the Johnsons, a couple who'd adopted 4 kids from difficult situations and somehow had room for one more. But he came to the cafe every day after school. Not a genius like Tommy, just a regular kid who needed someone to see him as more than a problem to solve. The cafe thrived beyond my wildest dreams. We served paying customers in front, free meals in back. The walls were covered with photos, every kid we'd helped, every senior we'd fed, every family we'd kept together. Patricia's old country club friends came for lunch, paying premium prices and tipping extravagantly, their own form of apology for not seeing what Harrison and Patricia really were. Tommy's fraud detection system exposed Harrison's last hidden crime. He'd been stealing from his own mother's Alzheimer's care facility. Another 5 years would have been added to his sentence if he'd lived. Patricia's parole hearing in 2043 would find her at 81 years old, if she lived that long. Word from prison was she'd become the most despised inmate in her unit, not for her crimes, but for her constant complaining about the food. The lithium extraction began in 2020, providing steady income for the foundation. We'd helped 300 elderly fraud victims recover their homes, sent 50 foster kids to college, and fed approximately 200,000 free meals. The numbers felt impossible, but Tommy kept perfect track. He always was good with numbers. One evening, as I was training Marcus to make revival soup, he'd insisted on learning, a woman came in. Designer clothes, expensive jewelry, nervous expression. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for $100,000 and a note. "I was married to a man like Harrison. You gave me courage to leave. This is from my divorce settlement. Make it count." I never learned her name. We got donations like that regularly. people Harrison and his type had hurt, paying forward the justice we'd helped them find. Tommy invested every penny, multiplying kindness through compound interest of the heart. My memoir, Revival Soup, A Recipe for Justice, became a bestseller. All proceeds went to the foundation. Hollywood wanted to make a movie. Tommy insisted they cast unknown actors, give opportunities to people who needed breaks. The film won 3 Oscars and funded another 50 shelters nationwide. But the real victory was smaller, quieter. Every night at closing, I'd stand where Grandma used to stand, looking out at the community we'd built on the bones of Harrison's greed. The cafe that was supposed to die had become the heart of a movement. The throwaway kid became a multi-millionaire philanthropist. The defeated woman became a symbol of resilience. The sign in my window says it all. Kindness served daily. Revenge served cold. Harrison not served at all. Marcus, now 17, just got early acceptance to culinary school. He asked me once if I ever regretted not taking Harrison's original $15,000, avoiding 21 years of hell. Never, I told him, because then I wouldn't have fed Tommy. Tommy wouldn't have saved me. We wouldn't have saved you. Kindness isn't an investment, Marcus, but somehow it always pays the highest returns. Tommy added, with that grin that still looked 8 years old sometimes, besides, 15,000 versus 50 million in justice? I'm good at math. We won. December 20th, 2025. I'm still here, still serving Revival Soup, still finding cold kids by the dumpster occasionally, though less often now that word spread about our shelter. Patricia's still in prison. Harrison died after 7 years in his cell. The cafe serves 1,000 people daily through various programs. Tommy runs $1 billion anti-fraud operation. Marcus just started his culinary journey. And Grandma's recipe? I finally wrote it down. The secret ingredient was never a mystery. It was just love, measured in the only unit that matters. Enough. Kindness compounds better than any investment on Wall Street.